Nintendo's one of those companies that you want to hate really badly, but they happen to do good things sometimes, like make alarm clocks. But for real, unfortunately, Nintendo does make really good games, so whenever they do bad things, people have a really hard time just like holding them accountable to that because their games are good. It is the way it is. But Nintendo has always been like this. In fact, they've been like this since Blockbuster, which I'll tell you about right after word from our sponsor, Raycon. Because there's no better way to isolate yourself from the sounds of lives being destroyed while you wait outside a courtroom for your lawsuit with undisclosed company than Raycon earbuds. Now with active noise canceling. Raycon earbuds are comfortable and more importantly, they stay in my ears. I am definitely a person with oddly shaped ear holes because most earbuds just fall out of my ears, but Raycons don't. And since they're a snug fit, it is very noise isolating. And now the everyday earbuds also have active noise canceling, which is honestly a must-have for flights. It is insane how quiet a plane can be. The Raycon everyday earbuds are also IP66 weather and sweat resistant, which is why I always use these at the gym. I go like 3 times a week, and I am pretty much always using Raycon earbuds. And the new Raycon carrying case also has wireless charging, which is just super convenient, especially for earbuds. And as always, Raycons come in a variety of colors, and now there's also cool, colorful protective case options if you want to stylize your Raycons further or just protect your Raycons. So what are you waiting for? Go get your own pair of Raycons today. If you want to get your own pair of Raycon earbuds, go to buyraycon.com/spatnz today to get 20 to 50% off site-wide. You'll get up to 50% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/spatnz. Thank you, Raycon, for sponsoring the video. And now let's get back into the video. So, in 1989, Blockbuster was still popular. In fact, it was the go-to place. It's crazy. And just so we're on the same page, you used to go to Blockbuster to rent, like, games and movies and TV shows sometimes. It was like Netflix, but you go inside of it. But Blockbuster rented out games because people wanted to rent games because games were expensive. And Nintendo did not like this because, of course, if people are renting games, they're not buying new games, which Nintendo only gets a cut from new games sold. And then Nintendo noticed a thing called the Computer Software Rental Amendment, which was made to stop software piracy. And Nintendo saw this and was like, hey, why does this not apply to video games? And Nintendo really hated the fact that people got to rent their games. So since they couldn't get anything done under the rental amendment, Nintendo found out that Blockbuster used to photocopy game manuals to give the people with their game rentals in case they didn't come with one, which in my opinion is obviously a fine thing to do. I get the whole niche legal argument of it's copyrighted work, but this is ridiculous. But of course, Nintendo did sue Blockbuster for this, and Blockbuster did back down because they probably would have actually lost that, which I think is ridiculous. Like, we don't even think of game manuals in that way anymore. Most people just look up guides on YouTube on how to do things now. So it's kind of insane that Nintendo got to sue Blockbuster over game manuals. Like, that's absurd. But this is where Nintendo really started cracking down on this kind of stuff and really having a no-tolerance policy with it. But this whole debacle with Blockbuster is really funny because 5 years after this, Nintendo releases the Virtual Boy, and it's a joke. And no one wants it. So they did a promo with Blockbuster where people could rent it for like nothing, which also did not work because the Virtual Boy sucked. It's just kind of funny that Nintendo sued them and they came crawling back desperate to sell the Virtual Boy because that thing was trash. Nintendo also has a long history of getting rid of fan projects, which I never liked about Nintendo at all. It has been my least favorite part about the company forever because Nintendo fans are extremely talented and creative people. And I'm not just saying that either. Nintendo fans really do make a lot of game projects related to Nintendo, and it sucks because Nintendo always takes them down. Nintendo has taken down over 500 fan projects so far. The amount of passion projects Nintendo has killed for their own company looks like the Google graveyard. This is exactly what you want as a company. You want people to be passionate about your stuff. And all of these people are making fantastic fan projects, and no, Nintendo doesn't want any of that. Like Pokénet was an MMO Pokemon game inspired by Pokemon and World of Warcraft. This thing sounded sick. And since it sounded good and better than anything Game Freak could make, they pulled it, because of course they did. Someone also made a HD remake of Super Mario 64, and this was released in 2016 without Nintendo knowing. And it was actually up for a while, but then Nintendo found it, and the creator was forced to pull it down and said it was fair that Nintendo wanted to pull it. And like, I get Nintendo told you to do that, and I get why he did it, don't get me wrong, but that was only fair in a legal sense. It's not fair in actual reality, let's be honest. Full Screen Mario was also pulled. This is a version of Super Mario Bros. That can be played on an internet browser. It had a random level generator and level editor, and it was sick. But of course, in 2013, Nintendo asked them to pull it down. And at least in this context, it was more understandable for Nintendo because Nintendo had Super Mario Maker coming out. And if they just did this one thing or things like this, I wouldn't really care. It's the fact that it's things like this and then things they never touch. Like, for example, Zelda 30 Tribute, a free browser remake of the original game of the series, remastered to 3D. And it was made for the 30th anniversary of Zelda, hence the name. And of course, Nintendo pulled it because, you know, you can't have people liking your stuff. That's insane, right? They have to hate you, right, Nintendo? You want them to hate you? Nintendo also pulled another Metroid 2 remake, which had improved visuals and fixes from the original game. And if you did manage to find a download for this one, the creator is still updating it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Nintendo pulled it because you can't do their job better than they can because they hate that. And Pokemon Uranium was a game that was also pulled, which is super sad, to be honest, because this game was insane. It was developed by 2 people over the course of 9 years with dozens of hours of content, 150 new Pokemon to collect, and more. This was a whole new game. And I wish I could have tried it, to be honest, because Nintendo's own offerings from Game Freak are terrible. I think it's incredibly insulting to pull any fan-made projects for Pokemon when your current lineup is this trash. Now, in fairness, Nintendo didn't directly pull this one, but they saw the writing on the wall and they pulled it anyways because Nintendo was going to ask them to pull it. It was a Pokemon game better than the official one. Of course Nintendo was going to pull it. And I think it's my biggest gripe with them pulling fan projects in general. If you're doing something with the IP, I understand pulling fan projects, okay? That makes sense to me. Like, I think realistically, if that's all they were doing, no one would really care, or they would kind of see it as understandable. Like, if Nintendo was only going like, hey, we're releasing a new Pokemon game, we worked really hard on it, we kind of don't want you guys to eat into our sales because we worked really hard on this Pokemon game, I don't think anyone would care. But it's the fact that they released this decrepit game and call it a game, and then also pull projects related to it, yeah, that pissed me off. Now, in a similar vein of Nintendo not wanting to compete with themselves, we have Nintendo's constant war with ROM sites and emulators. Now, if you're in emulation at all, you probably know about this. You could even be remotely related and still know about it, because Nintendo is infamous for going after ROM sites and emulating software. They do it all the time. Sony does it occasionally as well, but not nearly as often, and I just think it's kind of cringe, because first of all, emulation is basically a legal gray zone. It is not illegal or legal necessarily, and most people don't want to test it in court, which is why this has never really gone to court yet. But as it currently stands, most people generally agree that emulation is basically legal. Like, law enforcement's not going to come to your house for emulating a game. The whole thing is basically emulation is legal as long as it's your copy of the game. So you can't download a ROM from the internet and then play it that way. It has to be your own copy. That is the way the law is written. And the reason Nintendo doesn't like emulation is because people use it to pirate games, which I can understand why they wouldn't like that. I'm not going to sit here and act like Nintendo doesn't have a right to defend their own IP, right? They do to an extent, absolutely. But when a lot of the time people are emulating games they literally can't get or buy anymore, I think it's kind of ridiculous to even care about emulators at that point unless you're going to release the old games. If you're not going to give people a way to play the games they want to emulate, they're going to keep emulating regardless if you remove all of them or not. People will just make their own emulators. Are you joking? This is so short-sighted. It's obviously not going to work out for them. Like, recently Nintendo took down an emulator called Ryugenix, and the creator was contacted by Nintendo and offered an agreement to stop the project and remove it from the internet, aka they were probably threatened. And the reason I say it's short-sighted is because, yeah, you got this one guy, right? But what happens when like 3 other people want to do the same thing? And then also, everyone already has this emulation software, right? Like, it exists online. What's stopping someone from cloning it like they've already done with Yuzu and Suyu? Those are clones. Suyu is a clone of Yuzu made because Nintendo sued Yuzu. It will literally be a game of never-ending whack-a-mole. The type of person who makes a game emulator is the type of person who likes challenges, right? So Nintendo being so against game emulation very well might just be the reason people make more game emulators. But overall, from what I can tell, emulation's like really harmless. It's really not doing any real damage, and the fact that Nintendo cares so much about it is kind of a joke. Like, Nintendo, did you really have to start issuing copyright strikes for retro gaming channels? Really? Because they showed emulated game software? That's kind of insane. There was a game YouTuber called Retro Game Corps, and they had a video taken down of them showing an emulated game. And the thing that upset Nintendo seems to be the fact that we showed you how to dump the Switch game onto your PC, which actually kind of confuses me because, hey, Nintendo, with the way that it's legally laid out, this is the legal way to do it. If you can't show people how to dump the game from the Switch to your computer, how are they supposed to emulate legally? You're like actually encouraging piracy, Nintendo. Are you stupid? But Nintendo's stance on emulation is, as usual, very wishy-washy. Like, they're so inconsistent, it's really hard to narrow down how they actually, like, want to enforce their policy. Because, like, I guarantee you, you could find a video on how to do this very easily. And also, for the longest time, Nintendo just has not liked YouTubers in general, or anybody who talks about them literally ever. Back in, like, 2016, you couldn't even play Nintendo games on YouTube because they would just strike you down or something, or copyright claim it. It was actually insane. They even tried to launch their own MCN where they got 30% of your revenue because that is the price you pay to play Nintendo games on YouTube. It was such a joke. Nintendo is just so good at being terrible in every aspect outside of making games. It's incredible. And the most recent thing Nintendo has done that everyone has heard of is Nintendo suing Pal World for patent infringement. And this one really irritates me. So, I don't like that Nintendo filed all of these patents. You know why? These patents are dog. What do you mean, Nintendo? You patent throwing a ball at a monster in a field. How is that legal? All of these patents are extremely petty and arguably only exist to sue Pal World. You can think whatever you want of Pal World, okay? I know a bunch of Nintendo fans were freaking out when Pal World released because it was copying Pokemon or whatever, but here's the thing. You don't want Nintendo suing a bunch of people. That's no good for anybody. And 2, if Nintendo had Game Freak actually make good Pokemon games, Pal World would have had no room in the market. The only reason Pal World exists is because Nintendo's own failing. And you can think what you want of the designs being copies of Pokemon. Honestly, I don't care. I think it's ridiculous that Nintendo got away with releasing that trash called games, and they basically had no competition in the genre. Pal World is a necessity in my opinion, and I don't even like the game. I just hate Nintendo that much. And realistically, I just wish Nintendo would do better, honestly. That's really it. Like, it is insane to me that Nintendo would poison their own well to this extent, because realistically, all this is doing is priming people to hate them when they stop making good games. That's all this is doing. Because there will come a point where where Nintendo releases bad games repeatedly over and over again, and people will remember all of the years of them pulling every single fan game and every single emulator, and those Nintendo fans that adore Nintendo will turn on them, and they'll be eaten alive for their own creation. But that is the end of the video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like and subscribe if you're new. Follow me on Twitter @spatnz1, and click the guys down for check out more of my content, and have a good one.